This is one fat boy, and here are my NBA game predictions for March 21st. I'll be going over the 9 games and going over the spreads and over-unders for each of them. For Portland at Detroit, I'll be leaning towards Detroit -7 and just winning in general. Overall for the spread for this game, I'm just going off Detroit winning this game because Portland played last night while Detroit didn't, as this is one of those bottom of the barrel teams, like on both sides. So taking that into account, just being more fresh, Detroit should win, as Portland's been really inconsistent as of late. As some games they have like 120, the next game they'll be in the 80s, which kind of has been like the past few weeks for Portland. So I kind of see that trend going, but since they played last night, I'm just going to lean towards Detroit winning. And I will be leaning towards under 223, as Portland will probably have a rough time scoring, especially if Detroit can play some semblance of defense, slow down Portland. Then Detroit's offense is not the greatest in the world too, so hence I'd be leaning towards an under. For the Lakers at the Cavaliers, I'll be taking Cleveland -6, which as of now I think the spread will likely change over the night, as this really should be closer to like 8 points or 9 points, as Cleveland shouldn't have a problem beating the Lakers at all. Just mostly due to the fact that Cleveland can play 4 quarters and give effort throughout the entire game, as the Lakers, they can only give 3 quarters max. Like one of the quarters they just don't try in. It's usually the fourth or it's the first. So hence why I'm leaning towards Cleveland, like winning in general and easily covering the spread. We'll be going under 223.5, as Cleveland has a very solid defense, and if they can slow down the Lakers early, they get a handle on Westbrook, bother James a lot, like this should go under, as Cleveland's offense, they're not extremely high scoring, like they can score, but it's not like they're going to drop like 140. They'll probably get like 120 max. For New Orleans at Charlotte, we go with Charlotte -6, as the Pelicans played last night, but I do expect Valanciunas to have another good game against the Hornets, as the Hornets' inside presence is not great. But I think the overall shooting barrage from Charlotte being fresher, and with New Orleans playing last night, that should be more than enough for Charlotte to win. If they lose, I wouldn't be surprised. It is the Charlotte Hornets. They always surprise me with how bad that they can be. But I think with playing a team that played last night, who is missing one of their best players, they should come out with a win. If they do that, that means they scored a lot. So hence I'll be leaning towards an over 234.5 in this game. Because if Charlotte wins, that means they scored a lot. I don't see them winning like many games where it's a low scoring game, because their defense just gives up so much. And if they go cold, they're out. But I will be just leaning towards Charlotte having a better game tonight. For Miami at the 76ers, be leaning towards Miami minus a point. So pretty much money line on Miami, as Philadelphia played last night. They didn't play great, but they had to expend energy last night because it was a close game, and Miami, they didn't play. So just going off fresher legs, I was just leaning towards Miami. I'm sure Philadelphia is going to come out and redeem themselves from last night, but I just have to lean towards Miami. Personally, I won't be betting on the spread for this game, but if I had to choose one team to win, I just lean towards Miami. But for the over-under, I lean towards an under in this game, which I'll be putting around 217.5, as Philadelphia struggled to score last night, which on the second night of a back-to-back, you're going to struggle to score even more, which they should score more than 88, though. And Miami's defense is one of the better ones in the league, and Philadelphia also playing a slower pace overall, too. And also same with Miami, they don't play up and down real fast. So this generally should be a lower scoring game. So you can almost go maybe all the way down to 212, and then just be more safer, maybe under 221.5. But I think under 217.5 seems like a safe bet that's reasonable to hit. For Utah at Brooklyn, I'm going with Brooklyn -2, even though this is another one of those games where I probably won't be betting the spread on, as Utah played last night, but I do see them as the better team. But then the more I thought about it, I'm who on Utah can slow down Durant? And that's being more of a jump shooting team. That means Gobert isn't as effective on defense, as he's not the one guarding the wings. There's a lot of weak spots and holes on the Utah's perimeter defense, so I think Durant should have a field day. Like, I wouldn't be like too hesitant of placing like a 30+ point or a 35+ point bet for him, as Utah's defense, especially on the perimeter, doesn't really have an answer to how Durant plays. Which, if Brooklyn does win, that means they scored a lot, so hence I'd be leaning towards over 229.5, as I do expect this game to be close. Like, Utah can't keep up with the Brooklyn Nets and how they play on the offense end, and vice versa, and even defensively. Like, Brooklyn can clamp down, same with the Jazz, more on the back of Gobert, but both teams can score a lot, and I do expect them to score. For Toronto at the Bulls, we go with the Bulls -4, as the main reason is Toronto played last night in a close game, so going to be a little more spent than the Bulls, who didn't play. Even though the Bulls are slumping, I think this might be a turnaround game for them, and they'll come out with a win. But if they don't, put more stock on Toronto, as if they do win, that means they won against Philadelphia and the Bulls in back-to-back games, so your Toronto stock should go up and your Bulls stock should be going down. You might be seeing Chicago's as some frauds, because if DeRozan's basically not like backpacking the offense, I think the Bulls are going to struggle. But if you think DeRozan is going to backpack the offense, especially against his former team, then for sure take the Bulls. And if the Bulls are going to win, that means there's a lot of scoring. So hence I lean towards over 225.5. I think Toronto, even though they played back-to-back, like, Bulls defense is not fantastic. Like, they need Ball and Caruso for their defense to be like much better. So Toronto will be likely to keep up with the Bulls scoring, but you could also take an under 2. But I just lean towards an over, as I see that's more of like a 60% chance, while an under is more like a 40% chance, because Toronto can also clamp down on defense, like make it a closer game in that sense. But I think this should be more offensive. For Washington at Houston, going to Houston +5, as these are not the greatest teams in the league right now, but both have shown that they can play all 4 quarters. Like, the Wizards came back against the Lakers, which isn't saying too much, but it's at least they stuck through the whole game and played the whole entire time, so that's proved something. Houston, they've been kind of doing the same thing past 2 weeks. Like, they've been keeping games close. They do get blown out because they're not a great team, they're a young team, but overall, Houston, if they get going and they score a lot of points, that should keep them within 5. Like, the Washington defense, not great. Houston defense, not great either, so lean towards an over for sure. Even if 234.5 sounds too high, it's just drop it down a few points. That should be more than reasonable. Wizards don't really blow out anyone they don't blow out teams, and same with Houston, so it'd be just smarter to take a underdog in this case, so hence why I'm going with Houston +5. And betting wise, I'd say bet on people to hit threes, because this should be a high scoring game. For Boston at the Thunder, so both these teams played last night, and I think a 14-point spread, especially for a back-to-back game, would just be smarter to take the underdog, just staying within the 14-point spread, so hence why I'm taking OKC +14. I think Boston should still win. It shouldn't be a problem for them to win. If they lose, I'd actually be really surprised. But overall, between having Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that should be more than enough to beat the Thunder. I think the Thunder do play good defense. Boston plays better defense. So hence I'll be leaning towards under 260.5, as it's a more defensive game. But I think OKC will be able to keep it not being a blowout game. I think they'll be down the entire game. They could be down at 20, but I think they'll always keep it in that 14 to 8 point range. So they're not so they're out of the game, but they're not completely out of the game. For Minnesota at the Mavericks, we go with Dallas -3.5. So this is probably the most important game out of all the games tonight, as this kind of determines the seeding in the West. So for sure, this is a game to watch out for, and I think the Mavericks should be taking this game very seriously. So hence I'll be leaning towards Dallas -3.5, but also Minnesota. I'm sure they want to win too, as they can keep themselves out of the play-ins, possibly move up to the 5th seed, right where the Mavericks are. But I think the way the Mavericks have been playing, they've been beating quality teams. So I just had to give the edge towards them. But overall, spread-wise, if I were to bet on this game, like on the spread, I'd lean towards Dallas, just like winning in general. But I think for the over-under, I just lean towards under because if Dallas does win, that means they figured out a way to slow down the Timberwolves offense because they play really up and down. Because pretty much if the Mavericks can like slow this game down, that plays more into their hand. So they'd probably go under. If this really turns up into an up and down game, I think the Mavericks could keep up with their shooting, but I think Minnesota's just, that's how they've been playing. They'll come out with a win. So you could obviously flip this to like Minnesota plus 3.5. And if they're doing that, take the over. But if you're leaning towards Dallas winning, lean towards a more defensive game with an under. Thank you for watching. As always, bet responsibly. Have fun watching sports and enjoy betting on basketball. Once again, thanks for watching.